My boss is a real wolf man. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I watched a recent program about werewolves in elite society with great interest. I myself work as an assistant to one of these people, and I know several other women who have to deal with these same sets of issues. Much of what you described resonates with me and these other ladies I've made friends with, and we'd like to send you some of our own anecdotes about dealing with working for people who are not people all the time. First of all, just in general, no matter how charming they are, no matter how charming they may be, you need to keep a healthy level of fear in your heart at all times. One of the women I know is dating her boss, but she admitted to us that she still fears him. Even if they decide to get married, she knows she will still fear him. And if they break up, boy is she gonna fear him then. You know, I don't try to be close friends with my boss, but I do try to obey him and be efficient. He's the one who acts overly friendly toward me. In my opinion, he hasn't crossed the line yet into doing anything truly objectionable, but he lives just on the other side of that line all day long. In honesty, I feel confused about all of that right now. If he had hit on me when I first started here, I think I would have just left the job. Now, though, it's been years, and we've grown so used to each other. I'm very unsure about my feelings for this man, and I might actually be open to a relationship, as insane as that looks when I type it. At any rate, he's kept it legal and just barely ethical, so I have no scandals to report. I do, however, have some weird and sort of creepy stories to tell about his other self. During the process in which I was interviewing for this job, and long before he revealed his secret other self to me, I think I saw him sneaking around outside my house at night. If that wasn't him, it was another werewolf. But since he was the one I was applying to work for, it just makes sense that it was him. Here's what I remember about that night. I was a bundle of nerves after my interview with Mr. Wolfman that afternoon. I was having trouble sleeping, since I really needed work and I had no idea if I was going to get that job or not. I remember getting up out of bed late at night and pacing around the house, trying to get myself feeling sleepy. As I did so, I noticed something large moving outside of one of the windows. This was especially troubling, as this was a window out onto the side of the yard in the back. I lived alone and I had no pets, so there shouldn't have been anything large moving around out there any time of day, but especially not late at night. I moved closer to the window and I looked out more intently. After a while, I thought I could see eyes shine in the darkness looking back at me. I also started to think I saw the silhouette of a man wearing a mask with pointed ears, upward pointing ears, on the top of his head, not the sides. I went to go get my cell phone to try to take a picture, but when I got back I could not notice the eye shine anywhere. Shrugging it off as a weird thing that maybe happened or maybe I half dreamed, I went back to bed. It was a couple or 3 months later, when my boss first revealed that he was in fact a werewolf, that I put two and two together about what and who had been outside my window. The first time I saw his ears, when he was in his werewolf form, I knew those were the ears on top of that eye shine outside my back window on that night. If it weren't for the fact that he has no memory of the time when he is in werewolf form, I think I would have quit the job as soon as I realized that he was who that was. But I know he didn't intentionally stalk my house. It was because his subconscious was still thinking about me and processing how it felt about me while he transformed. That was why the werewolf came to stalk me that night. I'm sure my boss had no memory of any of this the next day. I know now from years of personal experience that he does try his best to get to a locked room in his restraining device before he fully transforms. I know it is his intention to never roam free as the werewolf ever again. When he gets excited, though, sometimes he loses control. He is a wolf, after all. He is a feral beast, doing his best to act civilized, for our sake. I don't even see why he does it. He could roam the woods, taking what he wanted, doing what he felt. Why put up with civilization at all if you could be king of the American woods? If you could be a living mythic figure, almost a god, with that much natural power? Why would you ever shave, put on clothes, and go to work? I guess that's one of the things I admire about him. He tries so hard to be one of us normal people. He seems to want our approval more than I can fathom why. My mother also told me that she saw what looked like something from a horror movie lurking outside the cottage that she and Dad moved to that year. She told me it was a demon with glowing eyes, and of course I asked her to tell me more. And that was about the entire story, though. She ran to get my father, but by the time they returned to the window, neither of them could see anything out of the ordinary. I asked her when this happened, and she and Dad narrowed it down by which team Dad was cursing at on the TV that night. When I looked up the season's schedule online, I saw that it had to have happened right around the same time that I saw the dogman outside my own window. It could have even been the same night. So, my boss can be a bit of a creeper, even though he doesn't have any way of knowing this, obviously. I don't blame him for it, but it worries me. I think it would worry you as well if you were in my situation. One thing about my boss is that he usually knows when he's going to have one of his attacks, and he has methods to mitigate the damage. It's a bit hard to explain, and I wish I could just show you some photos, but obviously I wouldn't dare get photos of any of these things. And if I did, I wouldn't share those images because that would be a betrayal of his confidence. At any rate, when he knows what's about to happen, he puts on his restraining device, which is something like a straitjacket, except it's something he can get into, without my help, if he needs to. It comes with thick mitts on his hands and feet to prevent scratching, and a muzzle on his long snout to prevent biting. The device allows him to walk, but as his limbs are all tied to one another, he can only shuffle slowly. Now, as I mentioned, my boss is the kind of werewolf who does not remember what he did while he was transformed into the werewolf, and those are the most dangerous kind. They're unpredictable and prone to extreme violence. They do not recognize you when they're in that state, so they might harm you or worse, and not even remember it. This kind of werewolfism or lycanthropy is the most severe of the kinds I've been witness to. One of my girlfriends who dates her werewolf boss has been telling me that she and he have been discussing the prospect of her becoming a werewolf too. It is possible to pass it on, and since he has a lighter form of the malady, she is entertaining the idea. Let's call her Bestie, because she's my best friend at that company. If I remember, I'd like to get back to this couple and explain them further. But first I want to mention that my boss does not want me to become a werewolf like him. He relies on me to be human, so I can help locate him when he sometimes gets lost. Granted, that hasn't happened now for almost 5 years, but it could happen again at any time. He's chipped, just like a pet dog, which is the way he puts it. I can trace him down using the little tracking chip inside him, and I have driven out to the sides of forests and beeped my horn until he figured out it was me coming to bring him home. Honestly, I wish he'd implant a cell phone in his body so I can just call him and tell him where to meet up with me. Or better yet, stick a GPS system in his werewolf brain. When he becomes the dogman or wolfman creature, he becomes someone else. I look into those eyes and my boss is just not there any longer. I make sure to quarantine from him when he is in that savage form, because one scratch from that man monster could curse me to having to endure the same fate, and I don't have the budget to deal with it that he does. You know, some of the girls even call it a venereal disease because it is transmitted through the exchange of bodily fluids. If you have an open wound and he even accidentally sweats into it, then you've got a chance of getting infected with lycanthropy or whatever it actually is. And as I've kind of implied already, whatever it is can't really be defined too clearly, at least not by the people I know. One of the girls in our group technically is a werewolf, but she and her boss both have it very lightly. They retain their own personality and consciousness when they transform, and the transformations themselves are less noticeable and shorter lived. That girl, let's call her Delilah. She is the only one of us who is really in control of her relationship with her werewolf boss. You see, Delilah's boss is married, and his wife is the one with most of the money, so he's scared of her and obedient to her. The wife is also a much more powerful werewolf than either Delilah or her boss, so I think they both fear her, as they should. But Delilah is at least as crafty as she is frightened, and she uses her boss's fear to get anything she wants out of him. The rest of us are afraid of our bosses potentially losing control around us and hurting us, or worse. Delilah, though, she's a werewolf herself, and she knows she can take her boss out in a fight, so she has no fear of him and maintains dominance in the relationship. When Delilah needs to interact with her boss's wife, and I thought this was brilliant, maybe because I would have been too honest to ever even think of this, but what she does is she tells the older and more powerful woman what she wants to hear. She mocks her boss, this woman's husband, to her face, and the two commiserate, sharing stories that make the man look bad. The wife laughs uproariously and thinks she's better friends with Delilah than her husband is. Then she allows the two of them all the time together that they would want to have. The rest of us, I'm afraid, are not so sophisticated as Delilah, and none of us so far have taken the plunge into becoming werewolves ourselves. Like I said, we've mostly all gotten offers during the course of our employment. Which brings me back to Bestie, my best work friend. Now, Bestie has a boss that she is in love with, who has a form of werewolfism where he does in fact fully transform. He does not lose his own consciousness or personality when he does. He also only transforms 3 days of the month during the full moon, and all in all, his form of the affliction is far more manageable than my own employer's. To be honest, I am jealous of Bestie. I wish that my own boss and I could openly embrace this kind of a relationship. I wish I could entertain allowing him to turn me into one of the werewolves too. I dream about it, but the dreams often turn to nightmares as I change into an animal that does unspeakable things that I would never want to do. Bestie, though, she is a woman in love. He is forward with her, and she is forward with him. They both do things to flirt with the other, and still act like they just met, even though I think she'll be at the company 4 years this spring. I've never seen two people hotter for each other over a longer period, ever. Bestie's boss, though, she told me that he can even speak when he's the monster. Like he doesn't even need to be locked up for the night, and he doesn't bite or scratch her. She can't push him around like Delilah does with her werewolf man, though. He is definitely the one who runs the show in that couple, and that's clearly how she likes it, too. Now, as you might have been starting to piece together by now, werewolves tend to like to work with other werewolves. There are a number of companies largely made up of werewolf executive staff, especially in the area of the country we live in, which I better not mention. Also, werewolf companies seek out other werewolf companies to do business with. There are less secrets to be kept if everyone has the same set of secrets. I don't really have any sort of Me Too kinds of stories or allegations concerning any of these bosses, although they certainly are all wolves. I would say that this is mainly due to the charm that these men possess. Lines that would make me smack another man's face seem cute when my boss utters them. I know he's being funny. He's just making fun of the way men act. He isn't really a jerk, and so when he pretends to be one, that only makes me laugh and feel more comfortable around him. But my Bestie, she would make a beautiful lady werewolf, I'm telling you now. She knows how jealous I am of her, but she's still undecided about marriage and all that sort of thing. What would their babies come out looking like? Nobody actually knows. You just have to carry it, give birth to it, and then have a look-see. Sometimes two werewolves can give birth to a litter of perfectly normal human children. It isn't something that anyone yet knows how to predict. And as difficult as human children can be to raise, werewolf children are supposed to be far worse. If Bestie marries that man, she knows she will become a werewolf sooner or later, whether they intend for it to happen or not. This is what stalled her decision about accepting his marriage proposal. Again, I'm filled with jealousy. She would get to become a beautiful fur-covered creature with more power than any human ever possessed. She'd be able to run as fast as a car. She'd be so strong that she could take down a grown deer. And what's more, she'd be able to remain herself, retain her own personality, as she did all this. So what's the problem? I think I'd have already jumped at the opportunity. Maybe she just enjoys being chased. Maybe she's confident enough in her own happy ending to slow it down and enjoy the ride in that direction. I started telling my mother about all this, and she had some fairly caustic opinions about the entire situation. She used all these old-fashioned words from the 70s about how bad men are or whatever, and she said I had changed. She said she raised me to be a feminist and I changed, but I'm still exactly who I was before. I haven't changed at all. Somehow my own mother is clearly jealous that I found a strong man to work for and center my life around. Her life has no center, and so she's warping and abusing concepts like feminism to try to belittle me for pursuing happiness. My version of feminism doesn't require that I die alone, never having had a man. My version of feminism means I have enough self-respect to make my own decisions in life, not remain my mother's daughter forever. Her nasty reaction hurt my feelings deeply, and at work, my boss could see that I was troubled. When I told him why, he asked me to call my mom on the phone so that we could straighten it all out. When she picked up, I started to tell her I was with my boss, but he took the phone from my hand and just started talking to my mom with a big smile on his face. I could hear her making cold and unfriendly sounds on the other end, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. Well, my boss is not really such a big bad wolf after all, and my mom has seriously backed off her complaints since then. I feel like life is making up my mind for me. I feel like sooner or later, I am going to consent to begin dating him, and I feel kind of happy about that. Of course, I know he could flip out and become the wolf at any moment of any day. I know he could destroy my life in seconds when in that state, and never even remember doing it. I know he could stalk my mother again as well, possibly placing her life in danger, as well as my own. I know that if I allow him to become an even bigger part of my life, I might have that life torn to blood-soaked ribbons in front of my eyes. I know that it is unwise not to fear him, because he told me so himself. But is that a reason not to care for someone? Is that a reason to insult a man, the way my mother did? These men mostly can't change who and what they are. Only a few of them became this way intentionally. In some cases, it's an accident of birth. It would be wrong to hold this against them. Of course, their affliction makes them faster and stronger and better equipped to survive. They are in many ways superior to us, not sick or ill because of the lycanthropy. So not only would it be prejudiced to hold a grudge against werewolf people, it would be unwise. These people know how to track you down without even thinking about it. If they don't know where you live now, they'll find you out later tonight. If you have a problem with werewolves, they will sense it. And let's just say that you won't have that problem for very much longer. That's part of why I wish I could join them in a real sense. And the other part is because my boss is a real wolf man. Her EP today, why she's an oracle, not metaphorical but categorical. She sees the future, she's not shady. I'm talking about that oracle lady. Please join us in thanking today's executive producer, the Oracle Lady Tahiti, for making this episode possible. The Oracle Lady gets to see our 3 new secret uncensored stories, including I Created the Dogman and I Saw a Dogman Eat a Drunk. Stories we could never ever tell on this channel. Here to explain more about how you too can see these uncensored Dogman stories, just check out what our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman, has to say. Hank? Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.